Hello, hello, testing 1 2. Okay, so basically, I just wanted to talk about the 5.7 Archon Quest and the choice that you end up making in it. Now, this is obviously in the title even says it's going to contain spoilers, so if you haven't played it, go play it. Honestly, it is really great. I give it personally like a 9.5, and it it would be a 10, but I don't know, something about it just it is amazing. The lore drops are great, but it just doesn't hit perfectly for me. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I wanted to talk specifically, really quickly, just so I can get it on YouTube, about this key. You find a key in the beginning of the quest, and you then find out, because of course you would find out here, that you've had a key all along. So basically, if there's a key in your inventory, that means you have two on your person. One that has always been with the MC, and the other one that you find at the start of this Archon Quest in a cave that had a hilly trail in it that ran away. But the big thing I wanted to talk about, because it brought up a fascinating thought process with me, is is essentially the choice that you end up making. So you have two choices. You either can keep the key. Wow, did I spell that horribly? I even spelled keep wrong. Wow, I am not typing right today. Or you can give the key. And giving the key is the one that it kind of makes you lean towards. But the weird part about that is this is the more complicated explanation in terms of what happens. I got confirmation. Select give the key option. The key of hibernation chamber item you obtained earlier in the quest will be removed from your inventory. Okay, that's perfect. This is exactly what I needed to read, because this is insanely important, because this actually changes how the timeline works in the options. Now, obviously, by the end, technically there is no change because it's Genshin Impact and there's an illusion of choice. But this actually comes into this understanding of what the illusion of choice really comes down to. Because both of these actually change how the timeline works. And surprisingly, keep the key is the easiest one to explain. This one actually gave me kind of a headache until I had an epiphany. And I'll explain that epiphany in a minute. First, keep the key option is extraordinarily simple because, and the first thing I need to make sure that I point out is MC's key, he stays on MC's person throughout the whole timeline. No change. What I mean by this is, in the story, when you learn about the actions that your sister has done, you learn that at one point in time there are three keys that you get to see. However, the main character, that would be your character, their key is still on their person in the past in the hibernation chamber, and you still have it on your person. It essentially goes in a straight line, and it does not change any hands. It does not go anywhere. There is no change to that key. It's always on their person. This is super important in understanding, like, that it's the Abyss Twins key that ends up being the really funky part about both of these options. So keep the key has a simple chronology to it. Essentially, it goes as such. Past AT which is the Abyss Twin, has it on their person. And after Diridith ends up showing her a key that makes her forget about helping the Cataclysm and go find her brother, she goes looking for her brother. Seeing that there is a key, I said that, going to look for the MC, it's because I chose Aether, so I'm obviously gonna have some mix-ups and say Lumine instead of Abyss Twin, because anyone could choose whichever one. I'm trying not to have that mess up, but that's not the point here or there. That's not the point at all. The point is, the Abyss Twin ends up going to search for the sibling, and they're going to have their key on their person, which means that there are 3 keys in that moment. But after that, shenanigans ensue, blah, 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 and then present Abyss Twin ends up with the key still on their person. But when you choose the keep the key option, in order to make sure that everything happens accordingly, they chuck theirs on the ground next to Diridith. So now Diridith has the key, and it's technically past Diridith that gets the key. And then it kind of goes back to this part, where they show the key to the Abyss Twin, and they keep it for their whole timeline. But past Diridith ends up keeping it until she becomes Hilichurl Diridith. And still retaining the key, keeps going forward in time until 500 years in the future, where they are in the cave, leaving the key on the ground, where the main character, present time main character, ends up grabbing it. The entire story plays out, you choose the keep the key option, and boom, it is in your inventory, because if you so wish to keep the key as a memento, choose keep the key. This retains in your inventory, symbolizing that you have 2 keys on your person, and that's where it ends up. This is super simple in terms of chronology. Basically, the present MC ends up with 2 keys. One being the key they originally had, and the other one that was the Abyss Twins that just took an extra 500-year lap to get to their possession. Simple, easy, straightforward. This ends up becoming a pain in the ass to talk about, but not without talking about this lovely little item right here, the bootstrap paradox. A time travel paradox where an object or a piece of information sent back in time because part of a causal loop lacking a clear origin point. This is essentially what a key ends up becoming. And the reason why is pretty simple. Because remember what we started off with. The MC, the main character, always has their key. They will always retain the key. But then, coming back to the keep the key option, and there is this little bonus scene in this option where the present day Abyss Twin makes sure that the loop continues by chucking their key to Diridith's feet. Which means if that scene doesn't take place, the present day Abyss Twin will continue to have their key on their person. I need a drink because I am talking a lot. It's already been 13 minutes. So, where does the key that has been going back in time with Diridith come from? Because MC has their key in present time. Abyss Twin has their key in present time. Diridith has a key in present time. 3 keys at once. And this made me realize that it is a bootstrap paradox because there is no known origin point of this object, of this key. Think about it like this, just to make it a little bit more, just because this is what I ended up thinking about with the bootstrap paradox thing. If you've ever seen the show Gravity Falls, in season 2, I believe it was episode 9, Mabel ends up learning from the handyman Seuss how to open a vending machine with a certain trick in order to get the snacks from it. Fast forward through the episode, Mabel, with her brother Dipper, is 10 years in the past. Mabel sees a kid trying to get candy from the vending machine. She ends up showing this trick to that kid, and it's then revealed that that kid is actually Seuss. So Mabel taught Seuss, and Seuss taught Mabel. There is no true origin point. It's just this constant loop in time that doesn't really explain what is the true origin of the trick. So essentially, this key ends up becoming a bootstrap paradox, but this is weird because most of the time in bootstrap paradoxes, it doesn't create a duplicate of an item that already existed. It creates its own thing, like the trick that whoever, Mabel or Seuss, whichever one you want to argue, invented to open the vending machine without a key. So, how in the world can this be explained? And how come it can even be a bootstrap paradox to begin with? And after a lot of deliberation, I think this can come down to one single word: intention. Essentially, I think I had a question during all of this, trying to wrap this around my head, and that question was, one key and that would be, if there was only one key, that second key never came into the picture, would the present MC give it to Diridith? And I think, yeah, I think this was probably the best option. This key, where the heck did I put it? This key is the best option to give to Diridith as proof that it is their sibling. Because personally, the only other option to really prove it would be like an article of clothing, or maybe possibly an Intivat that I think both of them have, but I'm pretty certain only Lumine has them in her hair. So I'm not sure how Aether would get an Intivat, but also that would probably be some weird part to the story as well if I had Lumine, but either way, I feel like an Intivat would be inconsistent, and the fact that this key is something that only they would have on their person would be the one thing that the main character would end up giving to Diridith to bring back to the Abyss Twin in the first place. And that really made me think about this whole bootstrap paradox and how interesting that the decision of what would be intended from the very beginning to give to someone to go back in time to create this time loop would end up creating a bootstrap paradox of an item that already existed in the world. And I think that's kind of cool. But at the same time, that's what makes the give the key option in the timeline a bit more complicated, because for a full 500-year period, 3 keys exist at once. From the time of the Abyss Twin being shown the key from Diridith all the way up to the present MC, getting the key from the Hilichurl Diridith in the cave. This key has existed essentially for 500 years, a third key throughout, a third key existing in this time frame. I think that's kind of interesting and kind of cool. I'm not sure how much sense it makes, but with a bootstrap paradox and how funky time travel is, if the intention was to give the original key, then of course, when this whole thing started at the beginning, the main character would end up getting a key regardless, a second key, because that was always the intention. So in order for time to play out logically, that key ends up being the catalyst to this whole thing and kind of has to be created from essentially out of nowhere. Hence, this damn bootstrap paradox. And this is actually kind of interesting. At the end, the biggest difference between them is, hold on, pain in ass. I think the most interesting thing about this is the final real change between these two options in the end is who has what keys. In the keep the key option, MC has both keys. Whereas in the give the key option, MC has their key, Abyss Twin has their key. So they both have their own respective keys in this timeline, where in this timeline they both have their keys. But this also goes back to Genshin's little fun thing of, and it's not just Genshin, it's a lot of different games, but still, the illusion of choice. Because it doesn't matter which one of these timelines you're in. If the game intends for the siblings to reunite, game ends with things if the game ends with the siblings reuniting, does it matter who has what key? And the answer is no. If they both have their own keys on their own person, that's fine and dandy. They can do what they want with them. But if the main character has both keys, then in the end, all they need to do is just give them back their one key. Because these keys most likely aren't different in any way, shape, or form. Talking too much. I hadn't seen anything or heard any dialogue that makes these keys specified to a respective person. So it seems like it doesn't matter, and even though there is an actual change in how the timeline not only operates, but in the end result. And that's actually just another illusion of choice. Because think about it like this. Let's say you have 3 universes where the only difference is a single Pokemon battle. Because remember, in a multiverse, in Infinity, there can be massive changes and there can be extremely minuscule changes. And this is one such minuscule possible change. Where one verse you pick a move and defeat the enemy. Verse you pick the same move, kill the enemy, and it crits. The crit wouldn't matter here. They still defeated the enemy. And in the third universe, pick A and move, and you defeat the enemy anyway. And I cannot spell to save my life. There we go. But the point is, these are all different universes with only one single change, and that change being a single Pokemon battle where one thing occurs, and that is you pick one move, defeat the enemy. Pick the same move, defeat the enemy, but it crits. And if you pick a different move, and guess what? You still win regardless. That is how minuscule universes can be inside of a multiverse, which actually still lines up with the whole illusion of choice within Genshin, even though these are much more drastic changes between universes. So long as the end result is that the siblings end up reuniting, does it even matter? And I think that's another very interesting thought process here, along with the fact that these two both have their own different chronologies and how they work, especially and their own different endings on who has what key. That's all I wanted to get out. I hope I was concise in that, and I am now going to hopefully stop thinking about this now that I've made this video. Yeah, I